lunch break on day 7 of Tranche 1's Phase 3 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry. We've been listening to the evidence of Derek Brice, who was a Spycops manager. I'm joined with Paul Heron from the Public Interest
Law Centre.
Fumbled that.
Okay.
What did you make of Derek Brice then? Get a bit closer to the mic.
Well, I think he was the equivalent of Shaggy, as in, it wasn't me. I didn't know anything. I certainly can't recall. I have nothing further to say. And a lot of his answers were yes and no. And I think it feels certainly like a bit of a waste of time, to be honest, Tom.
Yeah, like a fucking massive waste of time, I would say. I mean, like, of all the days of inquiry that I've followed, and I've followed nearly all of them, this has been the least illuminating of any of them.
I agree. I mean, if we compare and contrast Creamer yesterday, who was very forthcoming, very knowledgeable, had a lot to say about certain things. Some of them we could probably agree with, some of them we would certainly question, but at least it was of some assistance to the inquiry as a whole, and also to, you know, court participants and lawyers are involved. Today, I mean, there's no doubt that it feels very much like a waste of time. I think a lot of the questions have been, in my opinion, and I'm sure my court participants who I represent will be the same, would be very evasive, very forgetful to the point of not being prepared even to answer some of the basics, and also deferring any involvement in decision making to either higher up or basically, well, it was individuals in the field, and what do I know? What do I know? They would say. All he was prepared to really say is, I was concerned of their welfare, which of course is a job, but of course he was reading the documents and signing them, but he had nothing to say as to the quality, the content, or anything like that. So it's extremely disappointing. And the other thing, it feels as if, being polite, he's kind of misunderstanding that this is a public inquiry in the public interest to try and get an idea of what the management were doing. This is not him on trial. It's not him, being forced into some kind of horrendous position. He's meant to be assisting the public inquiry and acting in the public interest. And it does feel, certainly from my perspective, certainly from the court participants that I represent, would be he doesn't really kind of understand. Or maybe he does, and he's just not prepared to engage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the latter much more. I mean, I think like it's not just that like he's lying about not being able to remember. I don't think it's the things that he's lying about. Like he had no knowledge. He's quite sure he had no knowledge whatsoever about the use of dead children's identities. I mean, that just doesn't make any fucking sense.
It kind of doesn't make sense given the fact that even the officers who were very much against, there's a couple of officers who were very much against using them or very reluctantly use them, were certainly have said it was a common tactic, it's a common theme, and you know the manager today is like, no, I didn't know anything about it, and it's kind of stretches credibility, I think.
It smashes credibility completely, I would say. I mean, like, more than that as well. It's like any one of the controversial officers. If Jim Pickford, Jim. Can't remember his bloody surname, but Richard Clark.
Yeah.
Any of these like controversial characters. He just doesn't remember them at all, despite at the same time saying, he developed a close relationship with all the officers.
Yes.
That as soon as any of the controversial ones are mentioned, it's like...
I think it's true. I think Richard Clark, I think it feels like it's setting off alarm bells for him, and maybe for one or two other officers that they feel as if it's something they don't want to go into. And maybe that's to the credit of the fact that we individually and collectively have been able to properly examine the role of Richard Clark and expose the role of Richard Clark, that they're no longer prepared to go near it. So, yeah, I mean, it feels as if counsel to the inquiry is kind of banging a head against the brick wall with this, and it's really disappointing. And let's see how it goes. I mean, what more can we say, Tom? It's very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, just the other one I wanted to highlight was the other big lie he went for, which was just, again, I think destroyed his credibility. When discussing those twice weekly meetings, every other officer that's mentioned it has gone on about the boozy nature of them and like the fact that they were alcohol fueled.
Yeah.
He claims there was no alcohol at all.
No. And also the other thing is, in twice weekly meetings, anybody who's even had a staff meeting once a month can remember some details, but certainly if you're doing twice weekly meetings, you would know a little bit more than what's going on. And if those twice weekly meetings are over the course of you being a manager, you would expect to at least know some details. And at best, he's just saying, well, there were welfare meetings and not a lot else went on, and it was all down to the individuals, and it wasn't me, and very much,
I mean, let's remember that he wasn't just the self-described welfare officer. He was acting head of the unit for a number of times over more than a year-long period.
Yeah, he was, but he seems to be even forgetting that role to largely. I mean, it feels as if coming here to central London today, this morning, has been largely a waste of time, I'd have to say.
Yeah.
And all we can say is that it'd be nice if we can have a replacement, please, because this officer's really not giving us any answers whatsoever, and it kind of feels a little bit more. It really does feel as if we're going through the motions today, and sometimes it feels like that at the best of times, but today it just feels like, what's really the point? Can we just call it? It feels like, when I'm following my own football team and Everton were getting beat 4-0, it almost feels like, well, let's call it quits at half time. You can have the 3 points. It almost feels like that. Let's just call it a day,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear that entirely. I note that we're coming back after lunch for him to be asked any further questions.
Yeah.
I severely doubt if anybody will be having any further questions.
I don't. I mean, you may have further questions as to whether you're going to get an answer more than no, it wasn't me, absolutely not, I can't recall. With hindsight, no, I can't recall. I don't think we're going to get more than that, to be honest.
Or my favourite one is, I can't answer that. Which is like, we're just literally like, I know, but I can't.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, that was often me when I was a student in the fridge, nicking somebody's food. I'm being accused of nicking it, and I'd say, I can't answer that, and quickly run off.
Yeah. So, guilty as sin. I think we can both agree that he's guilty as sin, he's lying like a bastard, and he's a disgrace.
I'm not too sure I can commit to those statements, but it hasn't been the most productive morning. Let's be honest about it.
No, it's been very, very frustrating. I think you're all getting a sense of how frustrated we are following it. Anybody else who's following it, I'm sure, is feeling the same. Well, we are coming back just for that. I think that's it then for today, right?
That's it. We finish. I think we were down to finish at about 3:00, but I think or even 4:00. But I think we'll be over fairly quickly, and it's that'll be it, Tom. I think today.
That'll be
tomorrow is going to be interesting because
Jeffrey Craft tomorrow, HN24.
That'll be a lot more interesting.
Sorry, 34.
Hopefully,
HN34.
touch wood. But today's been a bit of a waste of time.
Very much waste of time. I mean, we can only hope that Jeffrey Craft doesn't get any ideas from today's proceedings, because one of the things which really comes home is whilst Derek Brice is up there lying his arse off, he's not really being pushed on a lot of these things. So when he says things like, I developed a close relationship with so many of these individual officers so well as their welfare officer, he's not. But you said you didn't even know this guy. Come on, which is it?
I think that's a good point, and I think certainly either currently or probably after this tranche, this part 3. That's something that we, as core participants and lawyers, will need to raise, as in, when you do the softly approach, you can get information, but when you do the softly approach and you're not given information, there has to be an alternative strategy. And, you know, as a lawyer, I would have preferred, if possible, for counsel to the inquiry to challenge a little bit more than just accepting. But that's something that, as court participants and lawyers, that maybe we need to address certainly after this Tranche 1 Phase 3, but hopefully during that there needs to be a little bit more pressing on the point. But I think anybody who is here and watching this would be extremely disappointed, and you hope that conclusions are going to be drawn by the inquiry itself on this witness, and negative conclusions at that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's the lawyer's answer. Mine is you're a fucking liar, Derek. You're a fucking liar. You know you're a liar. You're a fucking disgrace. And the inquiry, buck your fucking ideas up. It's fucking useless. You've been fucking useless today. It's a disgrace. Sort yourself out. I think there's probably, I memean, there's not a great deal more to be said, really. I am in the room. There's some other of the court participants and people and followers of proceedings. Do either of you want to join? No, they don't. No, but they don't seem very impressed with me being so direct to the inquiry. But I mean, really, I mean, come on. Today has been a particularly frustrating one, and I'm sure there'll be many more to come. We'll be back in an hour in the room, listening to see if there's any further questions for Derek Brice. I guess I'll do a live reaction after that. There may not be much more to be said. Thanks for joining. We'll see you later.